I've spent nearly 2,000 hours helping men overcome their fears and go talk to women. But in that time, I've seen this strange problem occur where they freeze up and panic just when they're about to go speak to her. And this is a problem because the men that get stuck there, they end up wasting hundreds of hours searching around for a solution. And I've even seen some men give up on dating entirely because they could never solve the problem. The big issue is the solution is not where you would expect it to be. It certainly wasn't where I expected it to be. So I made the same mistake when I first started coaching them. And it wasn't until much later on that I realized exactly where the solution needed to be. So in this video, I want to save you those hundreds of hours and show you exactly where the solution is, and then give you 3 actionable steps so you can implement it in your own life and be able to get yourself out there talking to women in real life off dating apps. And these are actionable steps that any guy can do. It doesn't matter if you're tall, short, old, young, whatever it is. I've seen it work on clients of all ages. So what exactly was that mistake that I was making early on? Well, we were running drills, we'd be on the calls, we'd be going through, talking through the technique of exactly how to go over, how to walk up and approach. But it fundamentally wasn't working. It just simply wasn't working. It was not landing, and it almost felt like the more we drilled it, the worse it got, because I was seeing it like a problem as if you couldn't make a basketball shot, where if you shot, you missed. Well, you just need to drill it more and more. Again, if you just understand the technique, you'll get this. And as I say, honestly, they kind of got worse, which was really disheartening for me as I was attempting to help them. So I took a step back, and what happened was I ended up sitting on calls with these guys that were really struggling for just hours, like 2-3 hours at a time. I was on these calls, and I noticed this pattern kept coming up where they would speak to me about this sense that they didn't have permission to go talk to her. They didn't feel good enough about themselves. And underneath it all was this overall sense of shame in who they were. The reason why I was struggling to get these guys to go over and speak to women was because I was seeing it as a technical problem, when in fact it's an emotional one. And the issue is, that's often the last place men want to look. And if you're there now wanting to maybe click away from this video, I can tell you right now, that means it's even more important for you to hear this message, because it suggests that you're struggling on that emotional side. So I've not seen one client get over this without addressing these underlying emotional reasons. I'm going to walk you through the 3 steps of how to do that. I'm just going to go find somewhere to sit down to do that. Hi. Okay, well, this place seems to have no benches, but they do have these snazzy pelican signs over here. So either way, actionable step number 1. We need to target the shame that is built up. And for those of you that are even unsure of the concept, the shame you have are all the parts about yourself that you don't want anyone else to see, that you try and hide, that you lie about. And the reason this is just so deadly is because going over and speaking to a woman, that's so scary. We're so vulnerable out there. Why would we put ourselves in that position if we're also secretly trying to hide the fact that we don't feel very good about ourselves, the fact that we think our hair's weird, the fact that we were bullied when we were younger? All that could come out. If I go speak to her, that's such a tense situation. All of this could come pouring out of me, and that'd be embarrassing. I'd feel so ashamed. And that is a core reason. It activates your body when you're looking over at that person you want to speak to, but you just can't bring yourself to do it. The thing is, it's shame dawning on you. That real visceral reaction to no, I can't do it. All that, yeah. I've been through that with clients. I've even seen it in person when I've taken them out to do it. This is a core piece that has to be overcome. So how does one overcome shame? Well, here are 3 key ways, and it's what I've alluded to before. I consider myself something of an expert of this because I had to do exactly this process. I was exactly buried in it. All right, man. So, number 1, you need to start looking, not at the dog, but you need to start exploring the things about yourself that you always try and hide. Do you try and hide your mistakes? Do you think that you need to be perfect? Do you think that you always need to be dressed in a certain way, otherwise you won't be accepted? What are the things that you lie about? Oftentimes people who don't feel good and have a lot of shame find themselves lying more and more. Do you lie about the type of music that you want to listen to? Do you lie generally about the places that you want to live, the things that you enjoy? It suggests that you don't feel very good and you're trying to cover it up with, lies, trying to make people see an image that isn't really there. And if I go talk to a woman, she'll see through that image and it'll all come down like a house of cards. So look and address. Almost actionable step number 1, sit on the edge of your bed. Think of, what are the things that I don't want other people to see? What do I always try and hide about myself? What do I lie about? And the next stage, because we need to be aware of it first, is secondly, beginning to share that with someone that you trust. Like for me, honestly, this was a counsellor. Like I had lied so much growing up because I was ashamed of who I was. I was really badly bullied. I didn't hit puberty till I was like 17 years old, embarrassing as hell. And I hid all of that. And it made me afraid to talk to people. I didn't feel good about who I was. And it wasn't until I had this one person I could start to share it with that I started to actually see myself for who I was, incorporate that story into my identity, see that I was enough despite all of these things that I told myself were wrong about me. There will be there will be elements for you. I can't tell you exactly what they're going to be. They might be similar to mine, they might not. But there will be things about you that you have hidden that you're ashamed of. And until you encounter the shame, it's always going to be there and it'll always hold you back. So first identify it, and then secondly, find one safe person to start to share it with. For my clients, that can be me, but for you, could also be me, should you want to. But it could also be a friend. It could also be a counsellor. Fucking no pressure here. So find someone that you can start to share it with, because what you're doing on kind of like a psychological level is starting to incorporate it into your identity. We speak who we are into being, and we do that so we can build an identity, so we can have something solid to fall back on. And that's what we have to take across when we go and speak to the girl. A solid identity, not some flimsy paper mache thing we've created so people will like us. So, actionable step number 1. The second actionable step is pushing your limits. So I'm going to have to check my phone here because I have got a word that I will not be able to pronounce because I stole it from Andrew Huberman. But there is a part of our brain, right, called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And what this part of your brain is responsible for is your response to challenge, your response to difficulty, and it shrinks and grows based on what you put yourself through. So for someone like me who isn't really great at going in cold showers, every time I jump in the cold shower, it grows a bit. The muscle gets stronger. Like that part of my brain just grows and I'm able to take on even more challenge. But if I don't do things that challenge me, if I stay really comfy and cozy, then you know what? It starts to shrink. And I start to see myself as someone that can't overcome challenge as much anymore. It's genuinely a part of our brain that operates like a muscle. I watched the whole thing. He talks to David Goggins about it, who's literally, that must make up the entirety of his head if you know who that guy is. So this is something we truly need to work on, because when I think about myself in terms of, oh, I've got to go speak to somebody, some of the things that gives me confidence to do that is just simply what I've actually achieved in the past. Like, I had a client go on one of these, but I went on first was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. That was so difficult. Honestly, I did not really meditate much at all before that. And I turned up day 1. Everyone was there because on the first day you sort of get to know people. They were like, oh, how much do you meditate? And they were like 1 hour a day, oh, maybe an hour and a half. They asked me and I was like, I don't really do it. And they looked at me like, oh dear, you're in for trouble. Turns out that retreat was 11 hours of meditation every single day. I nearly went insane but it was one of the best things that I've ever done. It was so difficult, so challenging. So when people like offer challenge to me, when someone pushes against me, I feel like there's something solid back. When I think about going over to talk to the girl, I have this like cookie jar of memories of things that I've achieved in my own life that encourages me to think that probably I am enough. I've probably done some stuff that is quite difficult, quite challenging. I could probably go speak to her. And that is like an emotional feeling that I am worthy almost to be able to go speak to her. Because I've done some difficult stuff. I've quit my job. I've ran marathons. As I say, I encourage clients to pick what they think is difficult to try and grow that part of their brain. Anterior, honestly, you're gonna have to rewind. I'd have to check my phone again. But the one that I said before, maybe flash it up here. So start to grow that muscle, start to push your limits, because it will reinforce a belief that you are enough, that you are good enough, because you've put that challenge into the world. Then, thirdly, and finally, we're checking again because I'm having to do all this in 2 shots. Boom, okay. This one's important, and this one got a client to actually go up and speak to a girl because he was not doing this at the beginning. Thirdly, treat yourself better. So, some of the guys that come to me, I speak to them and I find out a little bit more about their life, and they can be really cruel to themselves. This message that I'm not good enough, yeah, it might have come externally originally, maybe from your parents, maybe from your friends, maybe you were bullied a lot at school, myself. But that message is something that we then go reinforce. We do that on a daily basis based on how we treat ourselves, whether we even decide to allow someone to interrupt us. So a good example of this is a client I had where he just simply wanted a book in a bookstore, and he had all the money to buy it, but refused to do so. And it was because he didn't like to treat himself very well, because it went against his message of I'm not good enough. Whenever something would happen that he didn't like, he'd be the people pleaser and stay quiet. Once again, I'm reinforcing that message that I'm not good enough. For many of you out there, that I'm not good enough message probably does land, especially if you're watching my content. That's like very much a me thing. One of the things that I discovered was I couldn't really trace it back to like an original source. But I could trace it back to my actions where I reinforced it, because I kept acting like I wasn't. I kept being the people pleaser. And it wasn't until I stopped being a people pleaser in every other area of my life that I stopped requiring absolute permission to go over and speak to a girl. One, because I know going over there, I'm simply offering the opportunity for connection. I'm not absolutely going over and stealing her bank details. I've gone over to girls that I've never met before in my life, and we've then gone on to have multi-year relationships just from an approach. I know the value that is offered at the point that a man is brave enough to go speak to a woman. Yet so many guys get lost in this idea of, oh, I can't speak to her. Oh, what if I'm interrupting a day? Oh, I'm not enough. The message is there. And if he reinforces that message all the time throughout the rest of his day, he's never going to be able to go speak to her. So look at the actions that you do on a daily basis. What are the times that you're telling yourself that you're not enough? When are you not treating yourself better? Buy the bloody book. If you're someone that can't spend money on themselves, do it. If you're someone that doesn't pay attention to how they present themselves, they let themselves go out with like bad grooming, their hair, their like clothes are a mess. What are you signaling? Well, I don't really care about myself and how I look because I just don't think I'm really good enough. Starting to present yourself in a slightly better way, treating yourself like you're someone worthy of being looked after. These are such key important messages, and these are the steps that help you go over and talk to it. Like, I would have never guessed this. I didn't realize that this is exactly where I was gonna have to go with clients when I started off. I was like, well, it's a technical thing. You say this, you go over, you talk to the girl, easy. Nah, honestly, I think I'd be out of a job if it was that easy, because all you guys could just get like an ebook and be done with this. But turns out it's not. Instead, it's us working through that kind of emotional side that's holding you back. That emotional side that's holding you back probably in a lot of areas of life. And until you start to be that person that addresses his shame, starts to share who he is with other people, until he is the one that starts to push his comfort zone, grow that part in his brain to being someone that sees challenge as something he can overcome. And finally, starts to be that guy who treats himself just a little bit better and sees himself as someone worthy of being looked after, because we are awful to ourselves all of the time. We beat ourselves up. Our internal monologue is always so devastating. It's time to change that story about how you treat yourself. And if you're ready to be the person that changes that, then you will also be very interested in the other trait that is the most disgusting to girls, the one that causes guys to have so much heartbreak. Once again, secretly, it's an emotional issue. So if you feel like you're needy as a guy, the worst thing that you can be with a girl, then I recommend you check out this video next, where I talk you through how every guy can overcome neediness for the rest of his life. Check that out, and I'll catch you on the next one.